Are you prepared to transform your well-being? I'm Sanjay Raja. My mission is to challenge our perspectives on food, fitness, and overall health. I own a successful nutrition and fitness business based in Orlando, Florida. And through this experience, I've learned that there's no one-size-fits-all solution. From creating delicious and healthy recipes, to training elite athletes, and even writing the book, The Food Talk. I've accumulated a wealth of knowledge, but here's the exciting part. There's always more to discover. That's why I'm embarking on a journey to connect with leading experts, unveiling the secrets to a happier, healthier life. Together, let's explore innovative ways to enhance our well-being. This is Recipe for Wellness. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of our podcast, Recipe for Wellness. So our next guest, it's interesting where I met her. I met her for the first time in New York City, and I actually never been to Central Park until her and I walked the streets of Central Park together. Her accolades are so long, I would have to probably take a good hour just to name them all. So it's impressive when you meet somebody so accomplished, and she has such a unique backstory that we didn't really get the chance to talk about it on the show. So I really want to talk about it today. So without further ado, welcome Parveen Smith to our show, Recipe for Wellness. How are you doing?
Hello, Sanjay. I'm doing really well, thank you. Really excited to be here with you again.
Absolutely, absolutely. You were one of the most interesting conversations I've had in season one, and you are based out of the UK. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
Right. Okay. So what's interesting about our episode was this the first time you came to the States for the show?
That's right. It was because I
Wow.
was interested to see what New York was like and how to meet you guys.
Yeah, no. You came to the right city. It's a global city, and we loved having you in New York City, and just understanding who you are, the amazing work you do. So, for those people in the audience who don't know who you are, I always ask this question to my experts, which is, we all as coaches, speakers, and people who are trying to change the world have a moment in our life where it was the impetus for us to say, I'm on this new path. I'm here to change the world. I'm going to go follow this path. I've heard your backstory. It's quite incredible. So I want you to talk about it with our audience about what started you down the path that you're on. So first, tell us, what is it that you do, number one? And then two, tell us the backstory about how you got to where you're at now.
So in the present moments, I basically help to transform people's lives through a modality that we have, and it is coaching, and it's helping their body systems be healthier. So the coaching side of it is where we can do the consultation, and we can see what's happening in their lives. And then we mix two things together. So it's the coaching and actually a modality that helps to reset a person's body system. And this is where the transformation happens. And it's actually termed AOT, which stands for, I named it myself because I felt something that was so beautiful, so light, so energetic, so vibrant, at the same time energizing. So I named it as a transformation. And because we were coming into a space, I think, for the near future, I think this is great for Recipe for Wellness, that we're looking about how can we really heal our wounds and traumas from a deep, deep level. So that's why I termed it Angels of Transformation, Healing and Service in the New Eon, because we're going to transform ourselves as we go through the decades, and people have had decades and decades of trauma in their life. And sometimes, when you have counseling and different things like that, there's nothing wrong with counseling, by the way, and you think you've just healed something. And then all of a sudden, so many years later, something else props up. And it's the same wound, actually, that hasn't been healed. And this is why the modality that we have with the coaching, it works so synchronistically and so divinely that the person's body system starts to feel different. And a lot of our people that are coming to us could be people from our Royal Air Force, detectives, sergeants, fire, people who put fires out, for example, people who are in teaching, people who are nursing, and even doctors come to us, psychologists even come to me. And what's happening here is because the deep wounds still have not been healed, and the body system goes array. So what we do is we try and reset the body system the best we possibly can. And you know what, Sanjay? And I'm going to say something to you. On the first session, people usually say they feel different, but each session
Mm.
does something slightly different again and again and again to help that person transition from that traumatic space or a space where they feel stuck to feeling better. And we are also noticing over the last so many years, it's all about longevity of life as well. So people usually feel younger. They really do start to feel younger, and their body systems seem to cope with anything else that may come their way. We're not saying it's absolutely miraculous, but there are miracle stories too.
Hmm. So this is interesting conversation. Part of the reason why we started the show was that I've had experience in the medical field, and I'm sure you've interacted with doctors of all sorts. And when you get into your story, you interacted with a lot of doctors, of course. Um, and I wanted this to be a space with the TV show, with the podcast, where we talk about things that medicine cannot explain, right? Because the spiritual, I think being on season one of the journey of the show, is that I neglected my spiritual side a lot. I worked on the nutrition, I work on the fitness side, but that side of me was not dealt with. And I think it plays such an important role. And after meeting you, you've kind of opened my eyes to a number of things. So I really want to get into this, but tell us your backstory about that traumatic, well, you can't even call it traumatic because it changed you into the person you are, that amazing moment you had and the resilience you showed and how you got to this point.
Yes. So Sanjay, I'm going to go back a little bit because my mother had five girls, and in the Indian culture, they need a boy to carry on the surname, as you will recognize this sort of thing in the culture in
Yeah.
India, so forth, and all around the world actually. And
Yeah.
my mum kept having these girls, and all of a sudden she had five girls, all under the age of 5 years old. And what happened there was there was some sort of conflicts, of course, in the family, in the marital sort of status. And then my mum and my dad split up. And as they went their separate ways, which is fine,
Hmm.
we actually recognized there was something happening to us. And I feel from the age of 3 years old, I can honestly say this to you, I was carrying trauma. And I can remember all the images, what I went through, what was happening, the scenery and everything. I can still remember all that. And you can even remember when my father stood at the school gates. And I thought, who is that man who's looking at me? And he was always, always very well dressed, always wore a suit, very well dressed. And as he was looking, I thought, I think I know who this person is. And I could see the shadow of a man underneath the trees on this particularly dark, like a autumn sort of evening or afternoon. And I looked at him and thought, God, could that be my dad? And anyway, so cutting a very long story short, my mum was a single parent. And as you can
Hmm.
imagine, that single parent and that us children growing up without a father was quite traumatic. But we never
Right.
sort of played it so much in those years, I'm going to say. But as we grew older, so coming into our teenage years, we struggled through life. We had little, very, very little, in fact. And my mum was trying to make ends meet. My granddad did
Hmm.
his very, very best, and he was so, so smart in his ways of thinking. And, he just wanted to see his daughter settle down as best he possibly could.
Hmm.
So then, cut a long story short, I went into school, I did my exams, but some of the exams I missed because I went out to work at the age of 15 years old. So there's the things that were building up in my life started off at a very, very young age. And this is why I know how much trauma can affect a person on a really deep level. But how do we deal with it? Because when we're young, we just don't know. Back in those days, it wasn't even talked about, in the
Right.
80s, it just was not talked about. And then as I became 17 years of age, something else traumatic happened. And then by the age of 19, my sister was found dead. And this
Mm.
is something that haunted the family, and it still does to this day. It's 36 years later, and
Wow.
we're dealing with things that had happened back then. And we just think, what would she look like if she was alive today? What would she be like, and how would she dress, and how would she speak? And we think about these things, even in these last week, as I'm speaking to you, Sanjay, this is what's been going on through our minds. And this, we just don't know when it's going to replay itself, even though we don't get too upset about it now, but we wonder what would she be like? Would she be proud of what we are doing right now? Because my big
Hmm.
message is we went through trauma and we don't want other people to go through it. What can we do to minimize this? And this is all of my work. But then fast forward a little bit more, I had two disabilities, which completely brought me to a standstill. So if you can imagine, Sanjay, Humpty Dumpty fell off the wall. and humped
Yeah.
put back together again. That was pretty me. And I remember
Yeah.
thinking this to myself. And actually, you know what, Sanjay? I think there's something within the depths of my soul that's made me resilient and strong because I had to
Mm.
cope with so many different traumatic situations that when I tell my story in depth, people are awed by it. But the thing is, what I want to showcase people is we can still hold on to trauma if we do not heal it. Hence, my work is so important over the last 20 years or so. And
Hmm.
feel really deep down that we must talk about this, Sanjay. There's a lot of people still burying this. Guess what? Guess what, Sanjay? What I went through back in the decades that I did, especially when it comes to forced arranged marriages, it's still happening to this day in the UK. You're talking about people, women are still being murdered by their husbands in the
Mm.
UK to this week, to the last week, the weeks before. And
Wow.
when I thought about my sister over the last week, I thought, you know what? I wonder if she'd be proud of me because I'm speaking openly about some of the things that hardly anybody would speak about. But I
Hmm.
think looking at like a lot of people are saying on social media, she is with you. She's looking down and thinking, thank you. Because if I don't speak about it, Sanjay, and if we don't do shows like Recipe for Wellness and bring the awareness out, who will? So we are disruptive. We are
Hmm.
sharing stuff that is, we're trying to say, listen, this is not normal. We will not put up with this. We got to save lives. We've got to change things. We've got to change people's behaviors, their mindsets, and habitual way of thinking and being. It's going to take a while. It's not going to happen overnight. And I understand people's behaviors. But at the same
Yeah.
time, okay, I know what I went through and the age that I am right now. And I'm 100% so lucky to be alive today, sitting here in front of you, because that was not my prognosis some time ago. And I'm sitting here in front of you. I'm thinking, wow. And I'm a change maker and I'm happy to make the changes. And I sacrifice things because I'm happy to do that. But I also know my self-respect as well. So it's a fine balance, if you see what I'm saying. But I am willing to go out there and showcase to people we must change. We must change ourselves, heal the traumas, heal what we can, where we can, help people where they want to be healed. Because don't forget, we cannot always save everybody. I do know that. But I do know
Hmm.
something is those who want to be saved, healed, and transformed and want coaching, want wellness, want life coaching, want nutritional coaching, whatever it may be, they will say, listen, I've had enough. I don't want any more of this anymore. And can you
Mm.
help me? And they're the people we are willing to sort of say, come to us. We can literally help you. So my journey is full of traumas. And when people listen to my stories, and sometimes even grown men are crying. I was in India just 3 weeks ago, Sanjay, and a gentleman came up when he heard my story. They're all business leaders, they're all experts, and they all, one by one, people came up to me. And this one gentleman said to me, Parveen, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry for what you went through. And he had tears in his eyes, and you could feel it in his heart as he sat next to me. And that's when he said, I want to learn more from you. And that's when my
Mm.
book came into form, and he wanted to know more about that. But we want to transform people. That's my job.
So this is really interesting on a couple of fronts because you talk about still kidnappings happen, murders happen with arranged marriages and such, but I actually had an experience myself. I almost got kidnapped in India when I went there during college, and it was a crazy story. It almost happened to me twice. So I know this kind of stuff happens there, but I got out thankfully. So that's another story for another day. However, I was one of the first people. Well, I was the only person in my entire family who's been divorced, and that's a whole new level right there. Because, as you know, the Indian culture is very judgmental in a lot of ways, and being a man, they looked at it and they said, okay, you've been divorced, we get it. But I know from the other side, if you're a woman in the Indian culture, you're far more scrutinized than you are if you're a man, right? So I see that as well too. So I understand where you're coming from. So before we get too much in the weeds about what you do, because it's so interesting about what you do, because like I said, it after talking to you, I've been exploring my spiritual side a lot more and trying to utilize past traumas to my benefit rather than just eliminating them completely, which I think is a great point you brought up. So, share with us I can't do it justice, so I need you to tell the story, which is share with us how you went from a state of almost dying to literally seeing the light in all its form, right? So share that with us, and that how that changed who you are into the person you are today.
Sanjay, I'm so grateful that you are the person asking me this question
Hmm.
because, I used to think the experience that I had, that was 27, 28 years ago nearly now, and when I had a near-death experience. This was my first near-death experience. Basically, I'm sure that because we're talking about stuff that's really not talked about, I'm going to talk about this because I talked about this in India in front of like 60, 70 business leaders, and they were like, whoa. And I thought, if I don't talk about it, who will? So, as a
Yeah.
female, if you don't mind me saying this, um, I talked about having a split pelvis through childbirth. And in
Mm.
the UK, I was one of the first 1 in 29 women to ever be heard of to have gone through this severe trauma and the physical body disruption and dysfunction. So basically, I mentioned that in India, and you should have seen people's faces because I think people would have thought, why are you talking about this? Because it seems really a personal thing to talk about. Because
Yeah.
I now think, listen, it's not even about being personal. This is about bringing awareness. What can
Right.
we do to bring things out and to make it more aware to people that these things do happen? So basically, that was what happened to me. I had a split pelvis through childbirth with my third child, and I was given 50-50 chance of ever walking again with or without surgery. And it was
Hmm.
really severe. I was so, so ill. I cannot tell you. I was on about 100 different tablets for different vitamins, all sorts of different types of tablets throughout a week. My family used to come and sit by my bedside, and I barely opened my eyes for it seemed like years. And they thought this was me for the rest of my life, that was it.
Mm. Mm.
Then one day I had this near-death experience. And I'm going to share this because I don't know if anybody's ever talked about stuff like this before, but one day I thought to myself, after going through this severe chronic pain, if I now end my life, I end my life out of pain. I
Mm.
end the suffering for my husband and my children because he's looking after five people, himself and the four of us, the three children and myself. So one day I thought, if I take loads of tablets right now, which I had them at my bedside, and I
Hmm.
wrote my goodbye letters to my family. I wrote one for each child, my sisters, my mom, my husband. And I thought, if I end my life now, maybe this is a good thing. The pain was too severe. I was on a chronic pain list. I was having morphine injections given to me by doctors who
Hmm.
used to give me home visits. So I don't think I've actually shared maybe this little bit with you. But at that moment, what had happened was my 8-year-old daughter, who was my eldest daughter, she saw me from the bottom of the stairs and she shouts out, Dad, Dad, you better hurry up and come here. I think Mum's going to pass out. And I
Mm.
passed out. He caught me just in time. I passed out into his arms. As I passed out into his arms, I left my physical body. I had no pain
Mm.
whatsoever. And all I can remember is this is deep spiritual experience. And not many people, I would say, have had this type of experience. But I shot through this vortex of energy of light. And it was through the speed of light. I've never seen anything like it. But I was totally aware of what was happening. And I was speeding through this vortex of energy and light until I got to a space and there was nowhere else to go. And I
Mm.
thought to myself, oh my goodness me, maybe I'm in God's presence or the house of
Hmm.
God. And that's what
Hmm.
I sensed. And I can remember clearly at that moment, I was having conversations with divine source or the universe or angels,
Hmm.
whichever way you want to say this. And then all of a sudden, before long, I thought this was it. I'm done. I'm done with life. This is me. No more pain, no more suffering. But I was sent back down. The same shoot of light. I don't know how long I was
Mm.
there for, Sanjay. I can't even tell you. Maybe 20 minutes, 15 minutes. And then basically, I shot back through this vortex of light and I hit my physical body like this, a thud.
Hmm.
And when I came into my body, oh my goodness me, Sanjay, the pain was there. The same pain I thought I was not going to come back to. And then all I can remember, the paramedics had me on a stretcher and they were taking me down the stairs to the hospital.
Yeah.
And I don't know how long I was gone for. And then when I was taken to hospital, I was there for some time. They wanted to know what they could do with me next. Surgery is what they wanted to do. And of course, I'd already refused it once. And I thought, what's the point of cutting me open if you give me 50-50 chance of putting metal parts in my body and if I ever walk again? Why would
Right.
you do that to me? But I'm going to say something, Sanjay. It's a bold decision to make at the age of 27 years old. True?
Mm. Hmm.
You would normally, at the age of 27 years old, think, fix me, do anything. But at that
Yeah.
stage of my life, already before this experience as well, I just knew it's not the way I meant to be going. And actually, Sanjay, it took me 4.5 years to recover, not 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years. It took me 4.5 years to recover through grueling, grueling exercise. And you will know this with you knowing the body system of how much strength I would need to put around my pelvis area to build it up, to hold it together, because the ligaments had gone.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so this is so interesting because I don't think I shared this with you. I can very much relate to you exactly what you went through because when I was about 6 or 7 years old, we were living in Houston, Texas, and I ran a unknown fever. And the fever was so great, they put me in an ice tub. I melted all the ice around it. They took me to the hospital, and your experience is my experience. Because what
Wow.
happened to me was I was laying on the hospital bed, I passed out, and the next thing I knew, I was floating above myself at peace, at complete peace. And then I felt this sharp pain, and I went back into my body. They had resuscitated me by giving me the electric paddles, and I started crying because and my parents were all around me. They were crying. They thought I was crying because I was happy. I know I was upset because I'm going back to pain again, right?
Yes,
So
I get
I totally get where you're coming from. I can totally relate to that story.
it.
And that's shaped my personality because now I take a lot of risks. I go skydiving, I go scuba diving, and I go, you know what? I've been through it. If it's my time, it's my time. I get it, but I'm not going to not live my life.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Sanjay,
I know, right?
so, when you hear stories like this, because that is pretty much it, isn't it? And and I have had experience like out of body experiences, throughout different periods of my life, and I
Yeah.
totally, totally know exactly what you're saying. So this is like, my goodness, it's understandably why you are on
Hmm.
this platform, why you're making this global change, and why I want to make a global change in my way as well. So we're coming together, like this. So many of
Hmm.
us leaders coming together like this because we are ready. We are ready to do more. And sometimes it's not always, like I would say, the physical that my first book, Seeing is Believing, Believing is, it's not always about we want to go beyond the seeing. We want to go beyond all of that. We want to be able to, tap into something and make the difference. And that's where my journey's been, because that was my first experience of near death, but I had another
Hmm.
one. And it's something very similar again. I just thought, this is me gone now. But then beings of light came and, this is an experience where people might believe me, might not believe me, but that's okay too.
Hmm.
It happened. And I cannot deny it did not happen to me because I was wide awake when it happened to me. And I
Right.
was that second chance again. And hence, we are given this tool that we've got right now, which works people's body system to reset them. And it works amazingly. And it's about the logical and non-logical as well, because I know people are going to say, can you help me? I'm a lawyer. I'm going through stress right now. I've got
Hmm.
anxiety. Yeah, of course I can help you, but I'm going to use something that's going to help you to reset your body system, because the medical system may not be able to do that for you, or the medical system will give you medication, tablets and all that sort of thing that you may not want to take. So we are the next best thing that can support your well-being. I can also say, yes, we can work together as well, because that works too. If you've got to go for an
Hmm.
operation, you've got to go for an operation. But what we can do is we can bring your whole body system into a peaceful, calmful, contentful space before the surgery takes place. And that's what we've been doing for our clients with cancer,
Hmm.
all sorts of, heart disease, strokes, people with, heart operations. We've done this, and their body systems recover much quicker and than if they didn't. And that's how we see it.
So this is interesting because I think we talked a little bit about this on the show, but I want to expand upon it, which is here in the States, this kind of treatment and therapy is kind of outside the normal realm of what, is offered. And so
Yes.
people kind of have to go outside the normal channels and find people who do what you do, but it's not paid for, it's not accepted, everything's out of pocket. And there's a stigma also, which is people look at these people and go, "What are you doing?" I mean, there's that too. So it's a journey they feel very alone on. So how is it received in the UK? Like you're a resident there, you live there, you work there, and how is this kind of therapy and this treatment that you've been doing that has been very successful been received by the community out there?
Yes, it's true. So it's the same sort of thing. So you're paying for yourself. It's a private
Hmm.
treatment you would come for, and it's not fully accepted. But I also know for the last 20 years, I've been an absolute advocate, having meetings with GPs, surgeons, nurses, and doctors, and trying to make this change. And it
Hmm.
had felt, I'm not going to lie about it, I'm banging my head across a brick
Yeah.
wall and I'm not getting anywhere. Who's listening to me? Then you sort of go into a realm where you think, I'll just see patients and clients as and when they can find me and see me, and then we'll help them where
Hmm.
we can help them. And that's exactly what I've done for the last 20 years. And the more people are starting to go now into the space of meditation and stillness and silence, it's
Hmm.
a bit more accepted that if you can go into, for example, different Pilates, yoga, and all this, and you have that downtime, we are one step much, much steps deeper than that. We will help the
Hmm.
body to adjust and reset. So if people are sort of going into that realm as a norm nowadays, I'm going to say that it is a norm, yoga, Pilates, meditation and silence and awareness and mindfulness. We are deeper than that. And if people can do that, people can do this. And that's how I see this.
Mm.
When clients come to us, we work with them. We have to assess them. We have the consultation. We see where they're at. I mean, I've had, for example, social workers who are depressed, overwhelmed, nearly burnt out. And when they say, "Oh my God, can you help me?" And I hear their tone of voice and I can just sense with my intuition something's not right here. I always say to them, "You need to see me tomorrow, like ASAP, booking
Mm.
right now." And that social worker comes to me and she can't even look at me. She can't smile. She's in the depth of depression really now, but yet she's trying to survive in her job. She wouldn't be able to tell her supervisors and managers how bad it is, but because she's coming out of that sphere and she's coming into a different sort of realm here of like, can I trust this person? I'm just going to let her do her stuff. And when they
Hmm.
come to us, we do what we need to do with them. We've seen transitions take place. We've seen transformations take place. And sometimes we go deeper down and we realize, and the person realizes, actually, I'm not even happy in this job. And I've done this work with school teachers. I've done this for 20 years and I'm depressed because we need to dig deeper what's going on. And we find out they're not happy in the job. Then we make the transitions in the coaching, you see. And within a very
Hmm.
short space of time, within 3 months, people have transited because that's where the
Mm.
soul's not meant to be there anymore. They're not happy and they need to be somewhere else. And they've done it with our help, you see. And then we see the happy stories of
Mm.
depths of despair to the transformations.
So this is such a interesting topic. I could talk about this for hours, honestly.
Yes.
But yeah, here in the States, what we're seeing is that now you're seeing more, I guess, influencers, if you want to call them, talking about living your highest self, being in a vibrational state that matches who you are, right? And it's starting to gain traction. It's really starting to move forward. That journey I went on myself before social media. I was a child of the '80s, just like you, and that journey. So my journey is very simple, and that is I tried 20 different careers, didn't last in any of them because it wasn't me. Ended up on this one by backing into it, and now I'm on a path that I never thought I'd be on, but I feel happier than I've ever been in my life. Right.
Mm,
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I think that's the hardest thing is being a parent of kids, just like you. I tell my kids, try everything. Just try everything. See what you like, what you don't like. When you're young, you can test the waters. You can try so many different things. And then as you get older, you kind of narrow it down. What brings you the joy? And the most interesting part of my journey has been is that I've been cooking and doing fitness when I was in college as a way to relax. And that relaxation put me in such a good state of mind that I said, you know what? Why not turn my vacation to my vocation? And let's just go do this. And that's what happened. And I think it could be even that simple. But talk to me about how you could take somebody who is, full of self-doubt, right? And the term here in the state, I'm sure it's similar. It's called imposter syndrome, right? Which is we don't feel like we're supposed to be in a certain spot. What do you talk to them about without giving away all your secrets, of course? But what do you talk to them about and saying and how to question their beliefs so they take that step with you to find their true highest self?
Mm. Interesting because I did have a lady actually, and she was self-employed, but she was living with somebody who was a narcissist, as she termed,
Mm,
and she was another person who could barely look to me in the eyes. She barely spoke. She sat down and her head was drooped, and she had nothing going about her because she was so belittled for such a long period of time. And it was
mhm,
then in the end, she was full of self-doubt because that's what she was told. And she just didn't know how to move from that. And then it came to the point where she came and found me, and we helped her through a space over a period of time, short period of time. And I could see the change in her. I was like, wow, this is amazing. This is good. This is good. And then she started speaking out a bit more. Now she's working and she's like really happy. And she's actually no imposter syndrome at all. Once upon a time, she was like this. No imposter syndrome right now. She's on social media. She's posting stuff out, and we worked
mhm,
on a few things. Because of the formula that we have with this modality, it's so transformational. It will work with you. It will start to make the transition with you, and it aligns you to where you're supposed to be at towards your soul's
mhm,
purpose. So as you talk about influences and so forth, in some sense, you could say you've been an influencer all your life, and I could say I've been an influencer all my life because we are the change makers. But talking about it is okay, but I believe it's the doing that's the most
right.
important. And I'm a
Yeah. Yeah.
doer. And I don't want to just talk about it. I want to change lives. I want to touch the people that need to be touched and to help them move from this space to this space. So when you talk about frequency, oh my gosh, I was talking about this 20 years ago. Just like you say the same thing. I was talking about this decades ago. So I find it a tiny bit, I'm going to say, outdated, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I'm being
Yeah.
disruptive right now. And
Yeah. It's
I'm
all
going
good.
to say, yeah, I am totally finding it very boring. I've sat in
Mhm,
conferences, believe me, by so-called really big people, and I find it so boring because I was talking
mm,
about it 20 years ago.
mm,
2012, 2012, my groups were saying stuff like, how does this work? And I was explaining it back then, and well, some of the dreams and the visions and the premonitions I was having always come true. But I was telling them about frequencies and energies 2 decades ago, so just as interesting to see that
mhm,
influences are being made bigger than what they really are, actually, if you don't mind me saying this, being disruptive yet again. But yet the real
mhm.
work is done by the real people. And usually they aren't the well-known people either. This is what I spoke about 20 years ago about this. Because
Yeah.
you could have a million followers following this one thing or a group, but you know what? The work isn't done there. The real work is done with the people who are working behind the scenes, people
Mm.
who are doing it and really, really doing the work. That's where the real transformation is, not with the people who are following after a million followers. You see what I'm saying? There's a
Yeah,
difference.
no, I could relate to this because I started my company in nutrition fitness in 2011,
Yes.
and I was relatively unknown for a very long time, and then I just started working in the trenches. I actually started by being a personal chef to people in their homes cooking healthy food. I started doing from the ground up, right? And then changing people's lives that way. And then it just kind of built and built and built. And, it's the work that's done in the trenches. I completely agree with you. And the people who have millions of followers and stuff, and some may be legitimate, some may be not, but there's so much noise out there. And I think
Yes.
part of what we're trying to do with this show and talking to people like you is that there's a million different people you can listen to, but who's real, who's doing the work, and who is not. And that's our job, is to make sure that we bring on authenticity at all times. And that's the reason why we talked to you. We loved your story, wanted you on the show, and I can't wait for people to see your episode, honestly, because you go into your background, your story a little bit, and we're doing it here today. but just people knowing you and seeing you on screen, you have this wonderful presence that is very open and inviting and allows people to open up, which is great. So, talk to me about where you're at right now in terms of what kind of people are you attracting now? Because, if people haven't seen you, but, I see you on social media a lot and you're doing so many amazing things. What what's kind of the common thing you're seeing right now with people? I'm sure you've seen thousands of clients, right? And I'm sure you're getting them from all over the world. What's the common thing that people are dealing with right now that you're seeing? And what are some of the things you could share with our audience to help them overcome it?
Yes. I would say at the moment, oh well, gosh, there's such a variety. I see people who are overwhelmed with their partner. So we can call
Mm,
it overpowering narcissist behaviors. That's one of them.
okay.
The other one still is anxieties and stresses of life. Just generally, people are full of anxiety because they're overwhelmed. It could be work,
Hmm.
it could be home, it could be relationships again, but that's the sort of thing that we are seeing. Ah, but on a real physical level, with physical health problems, I would say cancer patients that are scared, of course, they're frightened because they've been given a terminal diagnosis, for example, and it's about how can we help them to feel less fearful? Because anybody who's given a terminal illness, you're going to be absolutely fearful. You're going to be so scared. You're going to be having all these anxieties and stresses and the past life thing that's been going on in your life coming up. Did I do this right? Did I do that right? Did I offend anybody? How was I? What was my behavior like? So all those sort of things do come up, but we do see people with cancer as well. And
Hmm.
we have helped people with some of the strangest sort of severe cancers that you could think of, for example, brain tumors. And these people, and even different types of health conditions, it could be strokes as well, people are recovering quicker. And actually, it's not, some people don't always recover, but some people that do recover, they have a longevity of life and they are
Mm,
appreciating that they've not sat on their sick bed. That's what we've seen the difference with what we do. People don't remain sick for too long, as in they're lying in bed or they've had chemo and radio and they're still lying on their bed. These people that
hmm.
come to us are actually physically doing stuff. And this is the sort of treatments that we can give to people via Zoom, just like we are speaking on, through video. We can do everything we do anywhere around the world without even seeing a person to touch by physical hand. Honestly,
Yeah.
this is the
So
magic miracle of all this.
yeah, so I think there's something to be said about this, and the mind affects the body, right? And this is the one of the things that I've seen in training people, working with different companies, is that our mindset is so important because we could be in the worst situation possible. But if our mindset is a growth mindset, it's positive, it's optimistic, the solutions just come to us. We could be in the best situation possible, but if our mindset is that of pessimism and blockages and the victim mentality, you could see the worst in everything, right?
Yes.
So, I've seen both sides of it. It's just how we choose to focus on. Am I choosing on focusing on moving forward or staying where I am or moving backwards,
Mm-hmm.
right?
So people want to move forwards. And the people that we see, they don't want to be wet. That's why they come to us. They don't want to be
Hmm.
stuck in the space that they're in, whether it's ill health, emotional, mental, or physical. And or even for some people, it could be spiritual. Can you help me get out of this? I'm feeling something, but I don't know why I'm going through this. And sometimes there
Hmm.
isn't an answer for that person. But when we help to calm the body system down and release the traumas, release that anxiety, because it is a physical, it is actually
Hmm.
a modality that we use on this level. So it's not just coaching, just speaking, but it's something else that we do. So it's very hard for me to try and explain this. You've got to be in the room to experience it. We always
Yeah.
say.
Hmm.
I was with actually a cancer patient actually out in India just 3 weeks ago, and there was a gentleman out there who was the manager of this wellness practice, and he says, "Can I come and watch you?" And I said, "Yeah, of course you can." So when he was watching what we were doing, he was quite
Mm.
surprised to see the before and after within the 1 hour, what the difference in that person's face and how they looked and how their body system was. And I thought, well, there you go. Now you've just witnessed a 1 hour session with this person. Now you can see for yourself the before and after. So there is a change that can happen with what we do. So coaching, I think coaching is great. Coaching is coaching. But I think because we use a formula, it works with the coaching really well. That's where the shift can happen on 4 different levels, not just on one level, 4 different levels. So
Mm.
if I could say to anybody, what is, how can you live your best life? And I'm going to
Hmm.
say, first of all, is you've got to, people don't do this. People always invest in cars and houses and holidays and trips away, but people do not invest in themselves. When you
Yeah.
invest in yourself first, to go deep within and resolve and release and heal, when we do that, guess what? The outside world will give us much more. The universe works with us if we can understand how we can
Hmm.
fix ourselves first. So, of course, I have had numerous awards and trophies just the last 2 years. And this is because I've been working so hard on helping people to be the best they can be emotionally, mentally, physically, and then on a soul level. And
Hmm.
what people need to do really is, and I've done it myself, self-invest. And if we self-invest, we love and appreciate ourselves. They're the first 2 things we do. Then,
Hmm.
then comes the outside world. You can never look after your family if you cannot look after yourself. I'm the
Yeah.
first person that will say this, and like you will, Sanjay, if I didn't
Hmm.
invest in my own health and well-being first, I wouldn't be doing the global work I've been doing for 20 years.
Yeah. The saying is, you can't pour from an empty cup, right? Right?
Like
Yeah, so we got to be the best version of ourselves to show up for other people that rely on us. So I totally get that. Being a parent, especially, you're a parent, I'm a parent, you have to be, and you're setting an example. I think that's the other part, is that you're setting them up for success, and that is you deal with things head on, but you deal with it in such a manner that it shows them that they can overcome anything as well too, which is which is such a big part of. I wish I kind of had that, because being in an Indian household, I know my dad was dealing with a lot of stuff, but he just hid it. He hid it, everything, and he put on this fake front, and then he would get angry at times for no reason, and we didn't know why. We just thought he was an angry guy, but there was a root to it, right? And talking to you, talking to some of our other guests, I've come to realize that I have to show what's bothering me and be open about it in front of my kids, because they need to understand where it's coming from, so they don't think I'm just a miserable person,
yes, it's
right?
true, isn't it? True.
Yeah, so showing our true selves. So, Parveen, I could talk to you for hours, honestly. And it's just amazing some of the stuff you've done. But share with our audience, number one, where they can find you. Number two, where they can connect with you. And number three, what are you doing now? Because I've seen you everywhere. You're in so many different countries. So share with us where they can find your appearances, your upcoming podcasts that you're doing. So let us know kind of how do we connect with you and where we can find you next.
Yes. So you can find me on www.soul2soulwellbeing.com. I'm on
Hmm.
Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, and yeah, you'll pretty much see me on the social media platforms there. And one thing I am going to say though is I just feel, Sanjay, absolutely so happy, so grateful, so privileged to be alive today, because
Mm.
this was not, I thought this was not going to be my story 20 years ago after my second
Yeah.
disability. And I'm lucky to be now alive to see I've got 3 grandchildren as well. So I've got a
Hmm.
7-year-old and a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old grandchildren. And basically, I didn't think I'd ever see those days. When my 8-year-old daughter stood in front of me, and when I said to her, go and get Marlene and I needed help because I couldn't breathe. If they
Yeah.
didn't get the ambulance when they did, I don't know where I would be right now. I just don't know
Wow.
where I would be right now. So these are the social medias that you can find me on. And I'm always looking at how we can train people up in our modality, which is what's going to change people, really is. So there's so many different things we're doing. I'm going out to India, to Hyderabad, to
Hmm.
teach out there in February. I've got
Nice.
an invitation to Westminster for a conclave.
Wow.
Again, that's my third visit to Westminster next year. I've got a women's health forum that I'm going to be doing in March. And then I'll be going to Thailand as well, because I would love to get my wellness programs out there in hospitals, in every setting that possibly would embrace
Hmm.
well-being, really, is what we're looking at. And now this isn't going to happen overnight. I'm very much aware of this, but this was my dream when I was struggling with my own health 18, 20 years ago. And I thought, oh my gosh, if I have this modality, imagine where it could go. So if my
Yeah.
visions, dreams, and realities I was thinking about back then, if it's taken me 20 years, it's taken me 20,
Mhm.
it's okay. We still keep pushing forwards. And I'm one of these people, I said to one of my marketing guys, I am not afraid of giving up. I'm not afraid of hard work. I don't want to sit quietly for too long. So let's get on with the next project. Let's make the impact because I'm ready and I'm ready to go. Let's see where next year is going to take us because there's so much work to be done still.
Yeah, no, I can relate to what you're talking about because I think the biggest thing I take away from this conversation, and I think what the audience should take away, is that you can hear a lot of people say a lot of interesting things. A lot of people say a lot of quotes, a lot of motivational speeches, but the people who are not just thinking about it, but are actually doing it, that's where the change occurs. And that's the
Yeah.
hardest part. It really is. So I can't wait for your episode to come out on our show. Season one's coming out in January 2025. I believe you'll be in episode 3 where we come to New York City. So the audience is going to connect with you. I have no doubt about that. But I want to thank you for your time and just being open and honest and sharing your backstory because it's a hard thing to share. I totally get that. And just keep doing the amazing work you're doing. And for those who have never done the spiritual traumatic work to look within and to use it as a positive rather than negative, I highly recommend Parveen Smith to talk to. And we're going to put her website down in the captions below so people can connect with her. But thank you so much for your time and keep doing what you're doing. Stay connected with us.
Thank you. And just one thing to finish off with, a
Mhm.
quote
Please.
from one of my books. Nothing is lost, nothing is created, everything is transformed. Antoine Lavista. Thank you.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, that's wonderful. So thank you again, Parveen. And thank you, everybody, for listening to another episode of Recipe for Wellness. And we will be back next week with another amazing guest. Thank you and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.